Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show, and I just want to make sure that you know about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. Trust me, in the day and age that we're living right now, you need to understand how attackers look at you, how they target you, what they actually look for, the vulnerabilities that they can exploit, the avenues of approach, when, where, and how they'll do that, so that you can turn around and then look at yourself, your family, your business the same way and understand the best place and the best type of defenses to put up. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. Go get it wherever books are sold, and let's start the show.
The truth has arrived.
My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And it's great to be here. I don't want to say I told you so in the last episode of the podcast about what was going to happen in Washington, D.C., but it happened. Everything I told you about that could happen did happen. And why? I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Everybody that, unless you live under a rock, you know exactly that all this stuff that occurred, the storming of the Capitol building, the potential, we don't really know if Antifa was involved with it. Many people are saying, oh, absolutely. But I actually know of people who were there, who went into the building, and it wasn't just Antifa. And I don't like the fact, I'm going to say this right off the bat, okay? In fact, let me just say all this before I say I told you so and go into detail about why it happened. Let me just tell you on the record that although I disagree with the president, as I've stated, calling people to Washington, D.C. with no guidance, with no tasking, and just getting everybody riled up and letting them go, I disagreed with that. I've said that. But I do believe it happened for a reason. And that reason, although it's being overshadowed completely by the media, it's being overshadowed completely by the politicians, the fact is, what happened yesterday was that the American people showed up, pissed off at the government, and they stormed the place where government happens. Not for sedition, not for treason, but to hold government accountable. And quite frankly, they went in there and then they left, besides the girl getting shot and killed by the Capitol Police. Now, do I agree with the way that it turned out? Do I agree with the way that it was carried out? I don't really. I would rather see this organized. Do I agree with, I don't want to say the reasons why it happened, but the reasons why it happened are because the government is completely failed. I mean, you can see that the government is failed by the response that they had to that. Politicians did their politicking, and the leftist media did their echo chamber and were all aghast by what occurred. You want to see what middle class is all about? Watch what happened yesterday. When the middle class in this nation get pissed off, that's what happens. And they were comparing it to, on media, onto third world countries. And I mean, do they not look at the way the corruption of the voting process? We use the same machines that were used in Venezuela. So to call people who go in and storm the Capitol building because they don't want to take it anymore, that's actually what most third world countries don't do. Most third world countries exist in poverty, and the people are oppressed and will never come together or have the opportunity. They're too scared. They live in fear. The people that showed up yesterday at the Capitol building said, F you, fear, and they went in there. The outcome of the girl getting shot, let me just tell you right now what I believe about that. That was a bad shoot. And I think that the Capitol Police is also a failed government agency, totally worthless, did not stop anything, and the reaction was terrible. And by the time the people got in there, they were overran. And then one of them shot an unarmed veteran and killed her. When they weren't trying to burn the place down, they weren't anywhere close to where the senators or congressmen were. Somebody had broken a window out and was climbing over something to access another corridor, and they shot and killed her. They didn't go up and pull her down. They didn't tase her. They shot and killed her. Again, nobody's life was in fear at that point. Their life wasn't in fear the entire day. This whole nonsense about, listen, they did their job evacuating these people. That's what they should do. I mean, you shouldn't wait around to see if somebody's going to try to hurt somebody that's in official service. I think they did a good job there. But you don't go around shooting and killing people who are there in protest of the government, not people who were showing. I mean, if they were going to destroy this place, they would have destroyed it on the way through. I was watching videotape of them having discussions with the Capitol Police and people staying within the how they put up the velvet ropes to keep people from going outside, to keep the people that are going on tours in a certain area. The people were walking in those lines at first. They got out of them later on, but I didn't see anybody threatening anybody's lives. They stormed, flexed their muscle, and then they left. So, do I agree with the way it went down? No, not necessarily, but listen, this is what happens when you push people too far. And when people respond, it's going to be what we call in tactical situations, it's a fluid situation. And when you have a group like that is angry and that large, and when it starts to move, it's hard to contain. If they didn't want it to happen, they should have never been able to get close. They knew people were coming there. And they didn't call out extra reinforcements to guard the Capitol or anything else that I could see until after it occurred. I'm really to tell you the truth, I'm surprised more people didn't get killed by these Keystone cops. Now, are there good cops there that are part of the Capitol Police? I'm sure there are. But the jackassery and buffoon response that I saw today and the preparation that I saw today was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So again, let me go back to this. What I agree with is the people flexing their muscle. We, the people, showing up and flexing their muscle. What I disagreed with is the fact that it had absolutely no guidance. There was no tasking by the man that called them there. And of course, it was going to be made to look absolutely ridiculous by media and by the politicians that were there. These people, listen, it doesn't matter if it was GOP or if it was Democrats, the DNC. These politicians, as you saw tonight, they looked like a bunch of hyenas that were swarming a kill that somebody else, that another, like a lion had made on the plains of Africa. And they're going there to scavenge it. And they used the opportunity to make themselves holier than thou and do what they set out to do. And this is the whole process. I've talked about this for years, literally for years. Okay? It's a family tree, not a swamp. Even I'm guilty of calling it a swamp, but it's a family tree. What's happening in Washington, D.C. is it's a family tree. That's why Bill Barr comes out and says the same thing that a congressman says, the same thing that when I say the same thing, I mean the same exact thing, okay? The same thing that Bill Barr says, you're going to hear representatives say, you're going to hear senators say, you're going to hear somebody on CNN say, you're going to hear somebody on MSNBC say, you're going to hear Fox News say it, and let's just throw Newsmax in there because there was all over the place saying the same thing. No one covered this from the perspective of let's analyze what's going on. Not one news agency covered it that way. They all covered it with opinions. And they weren't there. They weren't interviewing the people there. They weren't talking to the people, why are you doing this? They weren't looking at the situation of what they were really doing. It was 100% entertainment news is what you saw today and spin. And the family tree of Washington, D.C. was on full display today. You had the people who showed up and who said, at that point in time, we've had enough. Look, it's no different in a lot of ways than what happened in Minneapolis. I'll separate Minneapolis from all these other places, okay? George Floyd dies, and people in the inner city who have a terrible relationship with law enforcement because of years of terrible tactics by law enforcement and years of thuggery and absolute sloth in the inner city, complete failed portions of the nation in these inner cities. They hate each other, the cops in the inner city. The inner city is the most violent place you'll ever go. Minneapolis is absolutely horrendous. And law enforcement has, in a lot of ways, they failed to police the area, mainly because they try to patrol and hunt rather than do what Rudy Giuliani did in New York City, which is put a cop on every corner and arrest people and have huge penalties for crime. They don't do that. Politicians ruin it. And so what happened? George Floyd gets killed, and this reaction occurs that builds and builds and builds. And the people, there were some people there that are sick and tired of what the cops did. They're sick and tired. There's people there that are sick and tired of the inner city and the way that it is. And there are people there that come there and instigate stuff and really don't know anything else. They're just there to loot. And that spins up into one big, huge, angry group. And they start burning stuff. Some of the people there believe in what they're doing. Some of the people there are just there to cause havoc. What happened today or yesterday in Washington, D.C. is that people showed up there to support the president, and just being in D.C. right now enraged them because the reality is everywhere you go in the United States, you're oppressed. You're oppressed by the federal government. You're oppressed by state government. You're oppressed on social media by these Silicon Valley douchebags that constantly tell us what we should feel and how we should say it and what's true and what's not true based on what they feel, how they think it should be said, and what they think is true and is not true. No free speech. And so people are oppressed. They're sick of it. We have this thing called the Constitution. Every state seems to be totally jacking that completely up. They're stabbing it every day that they can with a knife. With a legal knife. You got people that, this whole thing, for instance, with the coronavirus, totally jacked up. No politician handled that correctly. And so all this stuff has occurred. People show up in Washington, D.C. They just had it. They get closer to the Capitol, and they get angrier and angrier. There are people there that are instigating stuff. Most likely, from what I've seen, Antifa was involved with that. They amp it up. They get up there. They get excited. They're making a difference, and it just goes forward and propels from there. Look, the reality is if it had been organized, if the movement into the Capitol building had been organized, it would still be held right now. And this would be a whole different story. But the fact is, people showed up because they're patriots, and they showed up with no guidance, no tasking, no understanding of how this group mentality will start to grow in this type of an environment. And they got pulled right into it, and it just got out of control. But the fact is, even if it was out of control, what everybody is, they're not even missing. They're on purpose not saying this in the news, in the politicians. The fact is, the anger was justified and legitimate. I should say the anger is legitimate. It's there for a reason. The people that showed up there aren't angry for no reason. They're not just angry because the president didn't get elected and because these elections are as fugazi as if the Sopranos were running them. They're not just angry about that. They're angry because they've been oppressed, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Every dollar that you make in some way, shape, or form, by the time the money that is left in your pocket, I mean, you're going to end up spending it. But let's say you put in an investment, over 50%. Well, first of all, just the money coming out of your paycheck, over 50% of that's going to be taxed. And then you buy something, that's going to be taxed. Taxes for everything. You have a cell phone, it's going to have like 15 different taxes on it. People are oppressed. This is a free nation, supposedly, with these constitutional rights, supposedly. And the people are oppressed. So their anger is legit. It's been building. It's gotten worse. We have not had a real president since Ronald Reagan. And I will even say, to be honest with you, Ronald Reagan, although he was a successful president, was an establishment guy. Almost all the people that worked in his cabinet are either leftists, believe it or not. The CEO of the Washington Post was his chief of staff and now runs the Reagan Foundation. Or they were just complete establishment cronies. And as we saw in the George Bush 41 and 43 administrations. So we could keep going back. Carter, Nixon, Kennedy. Just keep on going back. I mean, you can go back even further than 1947, but things really changed right after World War II. It completely changed in this nation. And the generations that followed at that point got worse and worse. And the more technically advanced our nation got, the dumber people got, the more oppressed they got. And because of the oppression, the more angry they got. And then we find ourselves here. And so the anger is legit, okay? It's legit. The actions that the people carried out today, I keep saying today, yesterday, because I haven't slept yet. The actions that people carried out yesterday at the Capitol building are justified. They're not going in and trying to change the form of government. They're not colluding with a foreign entity. They're not trying to wage war on the government. What they were doing and what they are doing and what I do every single day is hold the government accountable for who they're supposed to be. But unfortunately, the establishments or the establishment politicians and this Washington, D.C. family tree has hijacked freedom, hijacked the Constitution, hijacked everything. And we've gotten to a point in this nation where the people are truly oppressed and they are at the breaking point right now. So as I said at the beginning of this show, I told you so. I told you if you show up Now, look, I'm going to tell you, I had a discussion with a friend of mine today, and about narcissism and about the dangers of being narcissist. And actually, we're going to talk a bit more about this maybe tomorrow, maybe a good show to end the week on for Friday. I'll have it on Friday. We need to really guard ourselves against narcissism in this nation, because the world has become a narcissistic world because of social media and just the sheer presence of a camera and on everything that we have now. And I'm trying not to be a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist, but I don't want to come off as a narcissist. I don't want to come off as somebody who makes themselves sound like a hero, or that they're self-important, or that anything that I say matters. All right? Because it probably doesn't matter to the majority of people that hear this podcast or see me on Twitter or whatever. Most people don't give a crap. And whatever. I'm okay with that. But here's the reality, okay? I told you that if you go to Washington, D.C., on the 6th of January, that it is going to be, one, a wasted trip. Most people will go there and go home, and they'll never do another thing. And two, you were being told to come there by the president, who gave you no guidance and no tasking, and most people had no idea why they're going. I stayed all night on Twitter. I think it was Saturday. I said this yesterday, or in the day before yesterday in the podcast. I stayed on Twitter all night asking the same questions. Why are you being called to go to D.C., and what do you think will be the outcome of it? And almost uniformed responses by patriots was that they were going there to support the president because the president asked them to come there. Now, and a lot of them believed that some big dump of information was going to be given, that these secrets were going to be revealed, that the president had more on them. There was none of that stuff. None of it. In retrospect, the way that this unfolded today, I keep saying that, yesterday, is, I mean, it was very predictable that it was going to turn into a show of force on behalf of the president, that people were fired up when they were going to go there. I told you that this was going to be used against you. I told you that if you went there without guidance and you continue with this hero worship of anyone, not just Trump, this Lynn Wood character, where did that guy come from? Sidney Powell, any of these people, QAnon, stop worshiping somebody that you don't know. Stop worshiping yourself. The most aggravating thing I hear from people who follow QAnon is that we're the Anons. Listen, stop worshiping yourself. Obviously, everything that you said over the past 4 years amounted to nothing. We don't have a Senate, we don't have a Congress, and we don't have a president, which means now this country is going to spiral to socialism. There's no Kraken. There's no super secret plan. None of it. And that is a narcissistic trail of tears, is what that is. And I don't like saying I told you so. The reason I'm bringing that up, and my main goal out of this episode of this podcast, is to help you understand how you can make educated decisions for the future. Because it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. What you have to do is, first and foremost, you have to stop believing everything you're told. You have to stop believing everything that the person that you like is telling you. You have to stop taking what you think is true from the person that you like and then telling it to everyone else as though it's real. Because the majority of stuff that is spread now by the right is faker than the news that comes out from the left. And it's more dangerous than the left, because the left doesn't, well, they do make stuff up, but more often than not, they take the truth and they spin it, right? They spin it and they make a narrative, and then they all repeat that narrative. What the right does is they cue in on a hero, and then other people make up stuff that they say that hero said, or that, oh, I just got this little drop of information, and then they tell it to somebody else and they spread it everywhere. And it's absolutely fake. And what is dangerous about it is that it creates fake hope. You see, the left creates fake rage, right? The whole left is all, they're enraged about Trump and this and that, and they're mad about all this stuff. But the right, it's fake hope. And you're probably asking, how's that more dangerous than rage? Because people follow blindly when it is fake hope. And here's the difference, okay? Fake rage, people take action, and they're told, act here, act there. The Democrats and the leftists, right? Everything that's happened in this nation over the past 4 years has pretty much been because of them. And when you see the things like the riots or the protests, those things are extremely controlled. They look like they're out of control, but they're not. They have their security teams. When I mean security, they're the people that are out there making sure that it happens, and anybody gets in their way, they handle them. They have their medics. They have their tasking long before. They have their buses. They have their financiers who pay for all this stuff. How do you think people got from Central America up to the border, who have nothing, own nothing, and have no transportation? They made it in less than 2 weeks to the border and stayed there because it was paid for by the left and organized by the left. The right listens to this fake information. They get false hope, and then they don't do anything. And over the long period of time, what happens is the left and their organization and the way they're organized and the tactics that they have and the echo chamber that they have and the money that they have behind them, their power grows. This happens historically wherever socialist occurs. I don't know why this keeps happening. I think it has something to do with Satan, but it continues to happen. And then the right starts to believe that they're the hero, that their hero knows all, that their hero has a plan, that their hero's information is secret, and we should allow the hero to rescue us. And that's where we end up. And what happened today is that people showed up to support their hero, and then they themselves became the heroes. And that also happens with the left, where they burn stuff and tear up stuff and shoot and kill people. But the problem is with the right is that it was not fake outrage. What was happening today was legitimate rage. It was legitimate pains, legitimate reactions to oppression. They just have never done anything. The majority of those people have never fought against the government. They've never stood against the government. Remember, this is a point that's very, very important. Take this away from this podcast and remember this, that what we call the government is not what the founding fathers intended. It's not what the Constitution defines. They may sit in the buildings, they may hold the titles, but they do not govern the way they were intended to govern. They govern through oppression, and they govern through trickery, and they get voted into office by establishments that give them just exactly like a king or queen says, and they give them the okay, or a mafia don says, I give you the okay. That's exactly how they get into office. And what you saw yesterday, again, was legitimate anger. It was actions that I believe justified and not really extreme. It looked extreme. But overall, the actions, Washington, D.C. picked up and moved on within a couple of hours, right? You look at Minneapolis, the city's still destroyed. You look at Portland, still destroyed. They were able to pick up and move on. You look at anywhere Antifa has gone in and brutalized a downtown area and patrons, they don't go back. It's completely changed. Washington, D.C. got right back to business of lying immediately within a couple of hours of a woman. This is the craziest thing. A woman gets killed unarmed in there today, and they didn't even stop what they were doing. They didn't even stop the lie, right? They just kept on going. That's how disgusting Washington, D.C. is. That's how disgusting the Senate. That's how disgusting the Congress is. Okay, let me refocus here because I feel like I'm all over the place, but I know what I need to say. Okay, and I hope I'm saying it, but I do feel like I'm a little scattered in this because there's a lot to process here. Let me look at some other factors from today. I watched the news all day long, and I watched on multiple agencies. I watched MSNBC, I watched CNN, I watched Fox, and I watched Newsmax. And to be honest with you, I was disgusted with all of them. I covered that a little bit a second ago, but the level at which the narrative now spreads is greater than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And having been in media for 7 years now since I got out of the FBI, I've never seen anything like this. People that have long-standing credibility on Fox News, for instance. I know Fox News has changed, but there's certain people on there that have been credible and have remained credible. Tucker Carlson, who I've criticized greatly, stayed as close to credible today as anybody that was on television. But even Tucker veered into the area of condemning what was occurring without going into completely why it was occurring. Now, everybody completely skipped over that and blamed the president for this. But Tucker got close. He held his ground to some extent. Sean Hannity, who those of you know that I've hosted for his radio show for years and years, I completely went off the rails. It sounded like somebody took somebody from the establishment in Washington, D.C. took a crap, put it in a paper towel, and wrung it out. That's what Sean's monologue sounded like today. It was 20 brutal minutes of listening to apologies for conservatives and their actions today. I don't know who he was speaking to, but we don't need a lecture from Sean Hannity. There was a point in time when I think Sean got it right, but that day is coming past. So I'll just let that. I'll let it sit right there. We don't need Sean Hannity telling everybody that this is how you should be. Okay, he lives in a mansion. Not just a mansion, it's like a castle. He has no contact with the people. He absolutely does not understand the oppression that everybody's under. And he should stop. He should stop with the lecturing of the people that were there. These are middle-class people, the majority of them. I know some of them. I've been around thousands of them, spoke to them when I go to these rallies all over the place. And listen, for all those idiots on Twitter who say, what have you done? I've done a lot. I've been all over this country. I've met and tried to organize people. I have sat and broke bread in probably 30 different states just in the past year with people. I don't just show up, speak, and leave. I show up, I speak, and meet people and sit with them and discuss what's going on and try to help them find solutions. And I'm not talking about rich people or establishment people. Man, I wish I had the ear of some rich people. I'm struggling just like everybody else in 2020, throughout 2020. But I still kept going and meeting with people and trying to get them focused. But these people on Fox News, like Sean Hannity, they have no concept of these people. They don't go and break bread with them. They don't go and meet them. These people fly in on their private jets, or they're flown in there by whoever the sponsor is, and then they leave. Now, I've always thought that Sean was a nice guy, but today's monologue was over the top, ridiculous establishment drivel. And it went right along with everybody else. I will say that Laura Ingraham also came close, as did Tucker Carlson, with kind of defining what happened. But they would venture back and forth into establishment speak or apologetic speak. Listen, I'll make this clear right now, okay? I'm not apologizing for anybody. I see the anger. And the fact that people showed up and did what they did, I mean, it's just a matter of time before it even gets worse. The politicians, they don't help anything. They don't even care, really, to tell you the truth. It's no different than everything you see in Hollywood, in the movies where they have the queens and the kings, and they just crap all over their people. The people in Washington D.C., they don't care about you. Right? We used to have this saying in the FBI, you may care about the Bureau, but the Bureau doesn't care about you. That's Washington, D.C. You may care about Washington, D.C., but the Washington, D.C. does not care about you. I don't care if you're white, black, purple, gay, straight, woman, or man. That Washington, D.C. doesn't care about you. And if you think that they do, you are you are trying to kiss a lion, okay? It's fake. So I'm not apologizing for it. In fact, I said over and over and over again, I condone what happened today because it has to happen. The government is out of control. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, right? And I'm not I've been trained by the United States government to kill by 4 different agencies, but I'm not a violent guy. I don't actually go out and look for violence. I don't even try to start gossip, which is a form of violence, I believe. What I do is I look at every situation, right? I look at these situations and I try to understand the reality of what's happening. And what has occurred in this nation over the past 200 years is that select groups of people got themselves into power one way or the other, and they have done the exact same thing as the king that we fled from 240-something years ago in this nation. The same exact behaviors and characteristics and management of people that the founding fathers declared their independence from, we have slowly grown back into, but instead of, and this isn't just the United States, this is one thing that I'm going to get into in a second. It's not just happening in the United States. It's happening all over the world. And there's basically kings and queens, right? Political parties that all either are leftist or they appease the left. That's it. That is it. Tom Cotton, the biggest turncoat in the history of Arkansas politics. He is an effeminate liar. And man, do I hope I get to tell him that to his face one day. I really do hope I get to tell him that, because not only does he put himself on a pedestal, but he lies and makes people believe he's more conservative than he is. He was a soldier in uniform, and he has disgraced all of that. But it's to be expected. He's a Harvard grad. I don't know how many of these people that are up there are Harvard grads that are saying and doing all these things, right, against the American people. So I'll say it one more time. I do not condemn, I hope that's what I said, I do condone what happened in the Capitol building. In fact, what I wish would have happened is that the people had been more united and that we would have had 10 times the amount of people show up there. there would have been no stopping the adjustment of government back to what it was intended to be. And that would have filtered out. But it didn't work out that way because we have a president, although he did an incredible job over the past 4 years, despite the nastiness that was going on from the left and the rhinos, he did a pretty amazing job, but he has no sense of guiding the people. None. Come rally. That's his guide. He has no idea how to task the people and organize them. Come and rally. That's his task organization. And see, that works when you are running a business and you call people in and say, and you call a meeting and say, okay, what do we need? And they say this, 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 and this. And say, okay, well, we need to get this, 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 and this. You just say it right back to them. They go out and they do it. Ask them what they need and then give them what they need. But that doesn't work here. You have to have a concept of what's happening, and you either take it to the next level or you get out of the way, because now we are not in a position to play politics anymore. We're not. We continue to play politics as usual. The American people will disappear. The middle class will disappear off the face of the earth. Already, right now, I can guarantee you what is spinning up in Washington, D.C. is a way to control the people based on what happened yesterday. I can guarantee you there's talk of that. There's talk of, well, look what happened to Trump today. They got rid of his Twitter. They got rid of his Facebook. They got rid of his Instagram. In one shot, he has lost contact because unless the media covers it, he's going to have no voice. Think about that. Every way of communication that he had to the people that circumvented the media is now gone. Unless he goes over to Parler, it's gone. Or ConnectZing, which he could. And those of you that have not gone to ConnectZing, ConnectZing.com, go over there and check it out, because it's growing. An app is coming this month, and you are not going to be censored. It's more like Facebook. Parler's more like Twitter. And you can have groups over on ConnectZing. But the president, use him as an example. You can be censored right out now. Okay. So I think I've covered the majority of stuff that I wanted to say about what happened yesterday. I stayed on Twitter for a long time. I was on Twitter from 5 o'clock in the afternoon probably until at least 1 tonight. Last night, I guess you could say. And it's interesting. It's very interesting, because almost everything I said was met with universal agreement, except for the trolls. You're always going to have the leftist trolls. I'm not worried about them because they say the same thing every single time. But let me look it up here real quick. I did a poll on Twitter. So now everybody's agreeing with what I'm saying. And a lot of people are saying, thank you for saying what is reality and not going along with the rest of these people that are, say they're conservatives and they're doing the complete opposite. But then I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do the mother of all poll questions. And you can go on Twitter and you can do this poll. It says, did storming the Capitol building, A, embolden Americans to stand up to a corrupt government, or B, did it advance the subversive DC government, socialist, communist, globalist family tree? And right now at this point, 1,073 people have voted, and 57% say that B, it advanced the subversive DC government, socialist, communist, globalist family tree. That's interesting, because everybody that is responding to my tweets are in agreement. They're agreeing that what happened today was warranted. But they are disagreeing, or not disagreeing, they're saying that they think it actually advanced the family tree of DC. And I don't think that they're wrong. I don't think they're wrong, the people that voted in this poll. But here's the thing about this poll, okay? While it may be correct, the reality is if we pause and regroup and we come together as a people and we use this not as a slap in the face, but as a proof of concept of the power of we the people, then we will be. I think we showed today that you can stand up against the government. You can stand up against the government. It's not sedition, right? You cannot commit sedition against a government that is failed, against a government that is tyrannical. That is the complete opposite of sedition. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I don't care if they're an attorney or a celebrity. I don't care. Most of the people that don't feel the way you feel right now are people that have everything they need to live until they die. Right? They don't work paycheck to paycheck. They have everything. Their biggest concern, like for instance, with people in media is losing advertising so that they don't continue to make a shit ton of money. That's the biggest thing that they're concerned about. Not where their next meal is going to come from, not whether or not the restaurant that they spent their entire life trying to build is gone. And by the way, I've got to say this, okay? I have to say this. The people around this nation that own restaurants, especially in the big liberal cities, I'm going to tell you the same thing I said to police, okay? We stand with you. We stand with you. We want people to have their restaurants open and have their jobs. We stand with the police. We don't want the police to be brutalized or to lose their funding. But I'll say the same thing to both of you. If you don't support the people that are supporting you, we won't support you anymore. And I've seen a ton of people trying to do everything they can to bring awareness to what's happening to the restaurant industry, and the restaurant industry does not show up for the fight. And then they complain that their restaurants are dying. Well, so I don't do that anymore. Somebody wants to support restaurants, you go out and do it. I'm not showing up. I've done this several times and nobody from restaurants showed up. Everybody else showed up. They didn't. Law enforcement, no more Back to Blue rallies. I'm not going to a Back to Blue rally. People want to support freedom or stand together, or they, to be honest with you, I don't really feel like going to any other rallies. If I'm invited to speak at a rally, you better watch out. It's going to be like a revival, because you're going to get guidance and you're going to get tasking. You're not going to get a guy coming up there talking about how great they are. I'm going to give you brutal truth. But when it comes to law enforcement and Back to Blue rallies, not interested anymore. Because the blue, right now at this point in time, is a bunch of people that are running around trying to protect their pensions and their jobs, and they will lock you up in a heartbeat because a leftist told them to. So that's the reality of that. So let me go back here now. Let me look at see who else I can piss off here. I think this is the bottom line. Okay, this is the bottom line for what occurred. I'm gonna try to say this within 1 minute. Okay, within 1 minute. See if I can lay this out here. This is the bottom line for what happened yesterday, January 6th, 2020. People were told to show up to Washington, D.C. by the president. They were given no guidance. They were given no tasking. And they showed up. The people that showed up are typically not violent people. They're not aggressive people. They're hardworking middle-class people. But over the past 4 years, they have been oppressed by Washington, D.C. They've been oppressed by their states. They've been oppressed by governors and mayors, and they've been oppressed by social media. And what they did yesterday at the Capitol building was legitimate, and it was warranted. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and I'm out of here.